What's up, y'all? It's Zach with Living Corporate, and you know what's interesting? I'm in this season of my life where I have a 3-year-old, and it's going to date this podcast. That's fine, but it's be like a little moment in time, thing. We're recording this in 2023, and my daughter, my eldest daughter, Emery, is 3, and I have my youngest daughter is 7 months. Anyway, it's interesting because in this season, more than ever, I'm appreciating that words matter. Words matter. And a really, really brilliant senior executive that I work with on a very regular basis says often that one of the things you cannot get back are words that come out of your mouth. When they come out of your mouth, that's it. And something about having a toddler, especially one who is as curious as my daughter, is that I'm constantly reminded that the things I say and the way I say the things I say matter. And it's important for anyone listening to this podcast today, irrespective of your level or your background or what you're trying to achieve, that the words you say matter. As a leader, the words you say matter, and you can't get them back once you say them. You can apologize, you can throw more words on top of the words you said, but you can't take back the things you said. You can try to add context and talk around it, but you can't take the words back. Be mindful of the words you say. They matter, and someone's always listening. And there's always someone listening for the things that you don't say. Now, why am I talking about words on today's episode? Well, first of all, because, again, the name of our show is Living Corporate. It's Real Talk in a corporate world. This series is called Real Talk Tuesdays. So, and you listen to a podcast, right? So, of course, if there was any place that you would hear about words mattering, it should be here, right? But on top of that, it's because of the person that we're interviewing today. I'm so excited. I'm honored, actually, that we were able to secure this guest. And if you don't know who this is, I know you know the company, Dictionary.com. Dictionary.com is led by Dara Sanderson. She's the CEO of Dictionary.com. And we talk about her career journey. We talk about the impact of words. We talk about language. We talk about product and her vision around the future of Dictionary.com, especially in this world that continues to shift and change in a variety of ways, politically, socioeconomically. I'm really thankful for the discussion we were to have with Dara today. And we had fun. So I hope that you enjoy this conversation. See you soon. Dara, welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm well. Thank you for asking. How are you today?
You know what? Life is life, and Dara, I'm over here shaking, baking, moving, grooving. It's just a lot going on. Now look, you've worked at some incredible brands, right? Like incredible brands. I'm always curious about like people's matriculation to CEO, especially if it's not like at the same brand. Can you tell us about your journey to becoming CEO of Dictionary.com?
It's a long and winding path. But yes, I have worked at a lot of different brands and a lot of different places, had a lot of different types of jobs. But I've been in digital specifically for a little over 20 years now. And I started as an engineer. I used to actually build things and, code, and it was lots of fun. And I'm self-taught because when I was in college, the internet wasn't really a thing yet. Like it was just starting. And when I got out of school, it was the dot-com boom. And I'd always loved computers from way back in the 80s, like Commodore 64 days. So I'm really dating myself. I'm going way back.
The Commodores? That's a great group, though.
in middle school. But, so .com boom is happening.
Yeah.
And I was super interested. So I said, all right, I started to learn how to build web pages. And from there, I got my first job at a company called hotjobs.com, which does not exist anymore. And they got bought out by Yahoo. And so I was there through the first .com bust. There's now been more than one. And, I worked through that. But it was, I would say, the biggest step I took was when I decided to move from the East Coast to the West Coast, and I took a job at the Walt Disney Company as an engineer again, building out Disneyland.com, DisneyWorld.com, and that was exciting. I'd always loved entertainment, and this was a chance for me to blend two things I loved, the creative side, entertainment, and digital. And this is at a time when, big brands were really just starting to launch their sites and really get more involved. So this is early 2000s still. So I've worked at the Walt Disney Company more than one time, actually. I started off in parks and resorts, later came back and worked on the television side, which was fantastic, just working with the networks on doing digital extensions of television shows. And at that time, really, digital, and TV was still a baby. It's so funny how things have progressed. We were the digital people, they're over there, but really the 5,000-pound gorilla was still, linear television. That's where the dollars were. And my half times have changed, in that period. So, I was there for a while, and it was at the Walt Disney Company that I made the transition from more of an engineering focus to more of a business focus. I've always been that engineer that was able to go into the room and talk to the suits about how things work and explain things and help turn those ideas into digital executions. But now I got to be on that side and say, hey, here are some ideas, right? So I had the underpinnings of engineering about how things work, and then I could take the creative and business side and turn it into that. So that was exciting. So, I was there again, and then I went to a few other places. I've worked at Fox, I've worked at Viacom, I've done lots of different things. And then later on, I came back to run what was called Platforms now at Marvel Entertainment, which again was the Walt Disney Company. It's like I kept going back to Disney, but it was there that I was overseeing all the digital executions for Marvel Entertainment. So that's Marvel.com, any mobile apps, digital licensing, helping the marketing teams for TV and movies. There's a new movie coming out. What are we doing on Marvel.com to help extend that? So that was fun. And I always got to use all the different things I had done, right? Everything from product to engineering to data, design. I'm a terrible designer. I got to do all that. So, it just was a progression over the years of different things. And then I was running product at a company called The Skim when this opportunity came about. And I've always been a person to raise my hand and say, I can do that, even if I'd never done it before. Having as I've gotten older, having more and more confidence to say, yeah, I'm pretty sure I could do that, and not being afraid to go take a chance. And so here I now sit in this seat.
So now you've made two age references, and I just want to say we're going to put this up on YouTube, but my primary is audio. Let me tell you something. You said the Commodores, and then you said you kind of alluded to it. You look phenomenal. Your skin is incredible. So congratulations.
Hanging in there.
Hey, you're hanging in great. Okay. So first of all, it's interesting how you talk to the fact that you came from a space of building things. And I really believe that it's the systems thinkers of the world that really make the world go around. The fact that you came from a background of actually of a technical skill and understanding how this piece fits into the larger puzzle, the implications of building. And I think when you talk about the principles of design or build or productization or building something, those principles, they carry on when you talk about larger org design and systemic long-term execution. That's super dope. So, dictionary.com has been a prominent online resource for language and definitions. How do you envision the future of dictionary.com in an increasingly digital and tech-driven world?
Yep.
And let me add a part B to that question because as I think about just the way language is shifting and changing and how we're interacting in digital spaces, I ask myself where does our legacy tools like, where do they fit in this new and evolving world, you know?
Yep. All right. So multi-part question. So first, yes, it's been around a long time. We just had our 28th birthday, actually, if you can believe that, dictionary.com. And in that space, I just talked about my evolution, right? Over 20 odd years. And it's amazing just how much technology has changed, right? In just that short amount of time. And it's like, it feels like it's always accelerating even faster. But, my point of view is, as long as language exists, the dictionary will always be important to help people find meaning and express themselves. And so just as in the past, we made the leap from paper dictionary to online resource, I think it's really important for us to continue to find new ways to meet people where they are and make it even easier for them to communicate. And learn things, right? So whether that be in the boardroom or the classroom, we want you to be able to find us on your phone, your tablet, your Alexa, or whatever new device, that's coming along, because there's always something new. So it's ever evolving. So the place will always be there, but it may look a little different.
Yeah. As I think about it, right? So I'll tell you when I use a dictionary these days, especially if I'm online or I'm talking to my people, and it's like, that people use words, I'm like, you don't really know what that word means. Let me go show you something, because you're abusing that word a bit. But to that end, to your point about spaces evolving and language evolving, new words are being added to dictionaries regularly.
That's right.
I'm curious, what does it look like for dictionary.com to keep up with because with these changes and assure accuracy and relevance? Because especially I would imagine, especially in this age of disinformation, misinformation, and people using words to now mean new things.
Yep.
With an effort to usurp or damage, there has to be some balance between really being a vanguard of language while at the same time honoring the very nature of a living language, the fact that it does shift and change with culture. How do y'all handle that?
Yeah, so people are very prolific. They just won't stop making up new words. It's always happening.
Yeah.
So our lexicographers, these are the people who write the dictionary, and our editors, they're constantly watching current events. And they're recording the language that's spin off of that. They look at television, radio, movies, periodicals, social media, anything. They'll even post stuff out of our staff meetings when they hear words. Their antenna's always up. So there are thousands of new terms that they gather every year. They research them. They rank them. They sort them. Some of them they turn into dictionary entries, and you'll see we do new words. Some of them they actually write longer articles about. But their research database is a fascinating snapshot of culture and society that's constantly changing. And so we want to stay relevant by assuring that we're representing language as it's used by many different communities, including communities that have historically been ignored or underrepresented when it comes to language. So, for us, that's all a part of the research and staying relevant.
To that end, right? In the recent years, there's been this growing emphasis on inclusivity and representation in language.
Yep.
So what is, and so when you talk about your team, part of this group, what does that fold into, just inclusivity and being respectful?
Yeah, so that isn't a recent thing for us. In recent years, it's become more of a topic, but, our researchers have been looking at that for a long time. And part of the research that I mentioned is doing the work to ensure that our definitions are inclusive and respectful. We update definitions too. We don't just put a word in and leave it. Some words' meanings change, right? So it's our job to document and describe, but not dictate how words are used. So that means there's going to be some terms in the dictionary that can be offensive, right? They're still words. So our work is to ensure that those words that while they're included, they definitely have the proper context and they're clearly labeled as offensive, including information and notes about why it's offensive. So and beyond, just the definitions, our editorial teams write all kinds of content about inclusive language. They give tips on how we can all better use them.
I love that. It's interesting. Last fall, and now this has been what I'm about to speak to there's new articles all the time around all of this, but I read this article saying Black women are tired of being the mule of America. And when I think about living corporate, Even though I exist in this world as a cishet Black man, one of my personal credos and the things that we do and live in corporate is we center and amplify historically marginalized voices, particularly Black and brown voices, particularly Black women, and even more and more specifically Black trans women. But we're really trying to make sure that we are re-emphasizing the most marginalized voices. And history, like every bit of data from in the colonized world, shows that Black women historically and continue to be overworked, under-supported, under-sponsored, with again toxically high expectations, expected just to save everybody. It was so anyway, this article, which is about Black women is titled "Black Women Are Tired of Being the Mule of America." I'll put it in the show notes. It was about the position of overwork Black women are often put in for their own survival and the collective survival of the world. How do you believe, if you believe, this extends to Black women in senior executive positions, and how can institutions better support Black women in these corporate contexts?
So, yes, I do believe it extends to senior executives in much the same way as it does and has to any Black woman who has to struggle to make things better for herself, her family, her community, by hook or by crook, any way that she can, right?
Yeah.
And so part of it for me, is by recognizing and utilizing any power that I might have to open doors for somebody else, to speak up, to give more access, and then improve working conditions for others in the corporate world. We don't get to shy away from that, right? That's not a thing. As far as institutions being more supportive, I think the best thing they can do is, again, to provide more opportunities for leaders like myself, right? Because having leaders like myself in these roles makes it that much easier for others to see that they can attain this also and be less afraid to join in. But also to not shy away from open and honest conversations about a continuing lack of diversity. It's no secret. There's not a ton of Black women CEOs, and then even harder conversations about unconscious bias and microaggressions, because these are the things that once people get in the door, they can lead people to not want to stay. So you have to be willing to open and talk about these things and address them. You're not going to solve everything, but you have to be open to talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think about this space and I think about so often, Dara, we interview Black women, or we talk to a lot of chief diversity officers or DEI directors or head of people strategy, and especially in tech, right, where we'll interview them in 1 year, and then 8 months later be and they'll be added to our newsletter, or they'll reach out to us and we'll be like, hey, just checking in, or they're part of our comms. And then I get back, oh, this email is no longer part of this organization, or whatever the case is. I look on LinkedIn, they've jumped somewhere else, right? Or they're off doing their own thing. They've written a book, or they're now they're becoming so it's this common thing. I think to your point, right? What's beautiful about what I'm hearing from you is you're talking about power sharing and leverage to lift as you climb. I think my challenge is as I think about these institutions, is okay, when are we going to eventually create the space and empowerment so that Black women aren't having to share the little bit that they have, but there's actually an environment where they can actually all, rise together. You know what I mean?
When you find that answer, give me a call.
Okay. So check this out. We're in this rise of voice assistants and smart devices. There's this and then you think about OpenAI and all of these tools that are constantly listening all the time and taking in data, taking in you're now data. There's this increasing demand for language related services integrated into platforms, right?
Yep.
Does dictionary.com have any plans to collaborate or integrated services with voice assistants or any other emerging technology that we're looking at right now?
I'm going to give you a real short answer. Yes. Our product managers and engineers work on this type of stuff all the time. We have teams that are looking at AI, how we can use it, how we can be carefully using it, because there's still an element of human beings that needs to be involved with context and language. But the short answer is absolutely yes, these are things we're working on.
Well, I love that. I'm not asking you to do any product press releases on that. Just when it's ready, just come on back to the show and we'll do it the proper way. Okay. So now, look, education, we talked about this already, about this age of misinformation and disinformation. Education is a crucial aspect of language development.
Oh, yeah.
How does dictionary.com support educators and students in their learning journeys, and what initiatives does the company have in place to foster literacy and language skills?
So we're 28 years old, right? And we already have a well-established reputation as a source for improving language skills. I mean, we get over 60 million visitors to our sites every month.
Wow.
That's a lot. A lot of them are students. They're teachers coming there. We have all sorts of different tools on the site for that. And without going into, again, too much detail doing product releases, we got a number of initiatives that we're working on to build out even more tools for teachers and students and parents, because we want language learning to be comprehensive, but also fun. That's something that I really stress with my team all the time. We love language and they're a bunch of word nerds, right? How do we take that love and that passion and pass it on with our tools? So we got lots of different things in the works that we're doing.
So, it's interesting, right? Like, especially as I think about education has been has been on the forefront of like a lot of dialogue conversations over the past few years. As someone, I have a 3-year-old who's, she's learning how to read right now. She knows her alphabet, so we're just trying to, and she can sound out a couple of words. Yeah. We're trying to get her to, continue forward. And we have a 7-month-old as well. So these things are definitely on top of my mind for me. What is your thought on the fact that platforms like dictionary.com may end up being like the only education or like source of objective truth that some kids actually get?
My thought on, I hope we're not the only one. Let's just start there. We do live in a world where there is just information everywhere, right? There's tons of it coming at people all the time. And it can be really hard to grab attention. I mean, a lot of businesses face this challenge. Yeah. When there's endless diversions and distractions, all vying for your eyeballs and your brains, right? But it is still really difficult to weed through all of that and find credible, trusted sources that you can go to. And look, I have no doubts about the expertise of my people and my team and the care and context that they put into the work that they do to continue to be a safe resource for people to get information in that sea of noise. So that's part of why I talked about us needing to evolve to meet people where they are, to make it even easier for them to find us. Because you're right. There's a lot of disinformation out there, misinformation out there, and we do try every day to be the antithesis of that. But it can be difficult, and we just have to keep putting the word out there, coming and talking to people about what we're doing. I mean, that's all a part of it.
It's interesting because as I think about I don't know, it's scary, Dara. I ain't gonna hold you. It's scary when these private institutions, we're running these private institutions. And first, to be very clear, love dictionary.com. It's not an ad, by the way. But I love
No, thank you anyway.
Yeah, it's not an ad. I remember for me, I remember, cause I'm also a word nerd. I love that phrase, word nerd. For me, what helped me learn, literally when I was in first grade, in my free time, I would literally just read the dictionary. And write, and then write the dictionary, write definitions of the dictionary down. Again, cause I ain't super young. I'm 33 years old. So so when I was a kid, dictionaries were books, right? So I would open it up and I would see, and it would show me the letter in English. Then it would show me the letter in various languages, and I would write them all down. And I would write the alphabets in the different languages that the dictionary showed me. So, it's a little scary when I think about the fact that dictionary.com and not some central place that is a public good. And I understand, to your point, how you're describing it. Dictionary.com is serving as a public good, but it's not a federally regulated entity. The fact that we're running to a private institution because these large institutions. Anyway, this is not a podcast about education. It's just a little spooky is all I'm saying.
No, I hear you. And look, my thing is, we are still humans, right? Yeah. I'm very much into the human aspect. of what we do. And I talked a lot about context and how you can go to a big public resource or even like an AI generated resource. Yeah. But a lot of times what you're not going to get is that extra context and that extra experience, the human experience, to understand the impact that word usage has, and how the information you're delivering can impact someone, not just them personally, but how they're communicating to others and the impressions that they're giving. So for me, I hear you, it is something to be scared about, but I do think that there will be us and other resources. There are still humans who are still really invested in caring about how information is being shared. We just got to keep making it known that we're here.
1,000%. So, it's interesting, like, to your point about like this whole conversation you've been talking around, like the points of differentiation of dictionary.com. Now, you're the CEO of a globally recognized brand with probably, I would say, a top 10 domain of all time. Dictionary.com.
It's a pretty good one.
It's pretty great. Now, let me ask you this: as a CEO, right? Because you got to be mindful of how you show up and what you say. Do you ever have like beef with other language platforms? Are you like, yo, I don't really appreciate y'all over here thinking y'all got my space with dictionary.com, like gang. Like what does that look like for you to be competitive?
So, no, there is no beef. We live in a free trade society. Competition is good because you know what? We look at our competitors and they do exist, right? But we look at what are they doing well, right? And how do we do that better? Right? How do we continue to help each other improve? It's not even like necessarily a beef. It's like if I see something that looks good, I'm like, you know what? We should be doing something like that. We should be thinking about this differently. How do we help people even more? So there's no beef though.
I didn't know if you were like, I didn't know if like you saw Urban Dictionary around the corner, you'd be like, you better get out of here. Y'all ain't doing it. I just didn't know.
Spaces that, the English language is wide and varied as we talked about. And there are spaces that we are not in as much as others. And, I'm more of a, and, this might sound like, oh, is she for real? I'm more of a like, how do we collaborate? Like,
I love that.
How do we collaborate to bring everybody to the table? Yeah. So, high tide lifts all boats, but there you go.
But see, that goes back to like, just the meta narrative of Black women and how dope y'all are. But okay. So here's the thing. To that end, right? When I think about like the larger lexicon and frankly how Black folks, like language, language in this country is shaped and driven by Black culture, right? And so like, to your point about collaboration, I'm curious to see like, what does it really look like to continue to honor, the history and the historical contributions of Black and brown populations to our larger lexicon? Because, that's like, to your point, like some of these platforms, and it's funny because I'm gonna tell you a secret, Dara. So white folks really love using Urban Dictionary, and they coming to me and being like, "That's what that means, right?" I'm like, "Nah, that's not what that means." That's not what that means at all. So it would be and I'm not pitching anything right now, nor am I releasing a product for y'all. It would be great to figure out what are the points of collaboration between certain platforms that are really plugged into or are really, really focused on culture and language and like established, like, to your point, almost like near 30-year-old platforms like a dictionary.com to help bring credibility and drive that discussion even further. Like that would be something interesting to me.
It's a conversation. It's funny. I think I'm doing a podcast in a few weeks about AAVE.
Yeah.
And my head of editorial lexicography, he will give you a 30-minute dissertation on how Black American English gets incorporated into English over time. But the source where it came from, people forget. And we've talked about how do we, give a credit to where this came from. Like even something as simple as the word cool. He'll talk to you about 20 minutes about where that came from, like Black music, right? Yeah. Just so many words. So it's a topic. We talk about it a lot. And how do we include references to, where it came from? Because there's a lot of it.
It's a lot of it. Now look, first of all, it's been a fire conversation. What I will say is earlier you said, you and your team, y'all a bunch of word nerds. And so obviously y'all, I'm sure and your team has to live with the appreciation that words matter. Like,
yes, they do.
as you think about this landscape, especially where we are today with the economic pressures, social political landscape tensions, and then also organizations that are really trying to like retain their talent and really drive an inclusive and equitable place to work. What would you say are some critical words that executive leadership needs to embrace in this moment?
I have a couple. They're not just executive leadership, but that's what we're talking about today. This is something I think about a lot in my life. Empathy. That's the first thing. Having empathy for different people's backgrounds, where they come from, what they're bringing to the table, really is a big part of helping to people feel more included and like they have a place. The second one I would say is self-awareness. Knowing that you don't know everything. Right? That you can always still learn, be aware of what you're doing in any conversation, any meeting. Being self-aware is the first step in knowing whether you are being beneficial to someone or in a situation or not, right? And being open enough to say, you know what, I don't know something. Teach me so that I can learn how to do something better. And then a thing that I find, and I try to use this as much as I can in my team and my org, is transparency. Being open, like the way the business works doesn't need to be a secret. The challenges that we are facing as a team, we need to face them together. You have to be open and transparent with your team as much as you can, because that fosters an environment where people feel safe to speak up and ask questions. And I honestly feel that, it really is when you have the right people in the right place and they feel like they can contribute, that's what moves business ahead.
Yeah, man, I love that. Dara, first of all, it was an honor and a privilege to have you on the show. We consider you a friend of the show. Dictionary.com is welcome back anytime. Maybe we can work it out where we can get Living Corporate in Dictionary.com. Y'all put us in there. I don't know if y'all have a media section. We got to figure it out. But look, before we let you go, any parting words or shout outs?
Oh, parting words. I mean, it's always the same, right? Please visit us at dictionary.com. Follow us on your socials. We're at dictionary.com. We're kind of fun. So you got to listen to what we're doing in there. And yeah, we just are happy to be here. Thank you for having me on to talk about Dictionary.
Dope. Dara, we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Take care. And we're back. Yo, shout out to Dara, shout out to Dictionary.com and the whole team over there. Very appreciative for everything y'all got going on. Shout out to the Dictionary. You know what I'm saying? Words matter. All right. I love you. Make sure you take care of yourself. We'll talk to you next time. Peace.
Living Corporate is a podcast by Living Corporate LLC. Our logo was designed by David Dawkins. Our theme music was produced by Ken Brown. Additional music production by Antoine Franklin for Musical Elevation. Post-production is handled by Jeremy Jackson. Got a topic suggestion? Email us at livingcorporatepodcast@gmail.com. You can find us online on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and living-corporate.com. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned.